All right, this is the Raw Sports Fan Podcast, back for another special episode. We are still in season 5, episode 22, and got a great treat this evening. You guys are gonna love this episode. To some, he might be Mr. Bell. To some, he might be Dr. Bell. To some, he may be James. I know him as originally as just Bell, but I've got none other than Dr. James Bell on the Real Sports Fan Podcast with me today. I gotta say, I don't know what to call you. I guess I call you Dr. Bell. Dr. Bell, how's it going?
Whatever you're comfortable with. I mean, we've known each other quite a while, and first of all, let me say this: I really admire the way that you operate this podcast, and I think I told you that actually I do catch the podcast whenever I can, and I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
So I like the way that I like the way that you sort of just interact with the people who are on, and so yeah, it's a great podcast.
Thank you. I definitely appreciate that, and I had LT on a couple of years ago, so it was great having him on and being able to give him his flowers, and that's what we're doing with you as well. Giving me your flowers. You're also a person that has been mentioned in many other episodes, whether it be from former players or just even people that just know you. You came across of being able to be on here, and then so when you said, why don't we do something, it was right on time. A great way to we're ready to end season 5, so a great way to kind of end things because you've always done a lot in the community. But I don't even know if people understand all that you've done, even going back, like you said, we've known each other. It's probably like 25 years.
Yeah,
hard to say. It's been a long time, So I've seen, even starting as a child, I've seen your impact on people like myself. Skinner, DeAndre, he always talks about you. He even said, I told him he was gonna be here. He said, I know I'm gonna be brought up in this one. So we talked about that, and like I said, a lot of other former players, even from when I had Lil Herb on here, and a lot of the guys that you coached before. We're gonna get into the guys that you coached because that list is also very impressive. So again, I just want to give you your flowers while you can still smell them. And just say I appreciate you, and we're gonna have a great episode and get into a lot of good conversation today.
I appreciate it, and I definitely I'm thankful for just the opportunity to be able to work with a lot of the kids in the area who are now adults, and I think that is the greatest thing for me, is to be able to see you guys growing up with your families and doing the things that you all are doing. I mean, that to me is just, that's what we do it for.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with wins and losses or anything like that. It was always about helping you all to develop into the best version of yourselves, and that's what's exciting to me.
Well, we definitely appreciate that, and like I said, we owe a lot of that to you and all the great people that was around you. So we're kind of coming on here, kind of with some breaking news. Maybe some people know, some people don't know. I know obviously a lot of people may have known formally you were on the band board, a band for people that might not know, Building African American Minds here in Eastern Maryland. But recently, you actually just accepted a new position. A lot of people may say, when I say new position, some people might be like, well, I didn't think he got the superintendent job at Talbot County. But we're actually not talking about the superintendent job at Talbot County. We are here to announce that you are now the director of instruction, academic support, and community well-being for Building African American Minds. So first of all, when I found out, I was just so excited, for you, and excited for the program, and where I know with someone like your leadership and all that you know and do is going to take BAM even to a higher level than it's already at. So again, I want to commend you. But can you talk about that opportunity, how the opportunity came about, and then maybe get into, if you can, some of the job description or some of the things you're going to be doing under that?
Sure, absolutely. First of all, I'm thankful for the opportunity, and it was it started through an informal conversation actually with Derek Daly, and so we were just kind of sitting around having conversation, and he just made mention of the recent superintendent search, And so he said, you know, you probably be, he said, we've been trying to get you to, you know, to work with BAM. And I said, okay, well, I tell you what, make me an offer, and let's see. And so he said, so you would consider an offer? I said, sure, I'll consider an offer.
Yeah.
And so what started off as a casual conversation led to an actual meeting with Bill Ryan and of course his wife Dina. Daly is the
Yeah.
executive director, and so the four of us actually sat down and had a conversation about the future of BAM, especially with respect to the building of the academic center. And so,
Yes.
you know, we're going to break ground with the academic center probably really soon, actually, in the next
Yeah.
month or two. And
Hmm.
and so that is going to provide just opportunities for community programming for children and adults. And
Yep.
so just thinking about that and then having an opportunity to be someone who can actually create some of the programs that go into that center was attractive to me.
Hmm.
Not to
Hmm.
mention it's in my own community. And so,
Yeah.
you know, and so it started off as sort of a, yeah, you know, let's see what you come up with. Actually wind up becoming a serious conversation. And so, you know, talked about it with Tara, my wife, and made the decision to say, you know what, this looks like a great opportunity to be able to come home and work in the community, which is something I love to do. And so
Yeah.
that's really how it came about. And my first
Yeah.
day was actually yesterday, as a matter of fact.
Awesome. Look at
Yeah.
that. Look at that.
So I'm definitely
Yeah.
excited about it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely, definitely, and the impact you're going to make, I know is going to be astronomical, and it's something I know. It's funny, you know, God has a mysterious way of working, and even a funny way of working. Because I'm sure if I told you, you know, 20 some years ago, you know, the place you used to live at was right by the BAM Athletic
Right.
Center and Academic Center, around that corner, and you're gonna walk out, and now, bam, that's where you're gonna be working at and making an impact on the community. I'm probably sure if I told you that, then you probably was like, man, go ahead somewhere. That would never happen.
You know, and it's funny,
Yeah.
and it's funny you mentioned sort of God and the path that God puts you on sometimes. I know the way
Mm-hmm.
God works with me. It's always
Mm-hmm.
unexpected. The thing that I think is going to happen, I've learned, don't put a lot of stock in what you see right in front of you as that thing that's going to happen. Because the way God works with me is
Mm,
to say,
like that.
I just want to make sure that I can send you wherever you need to go.
Mm-hmm.
And that I have to keep my mind open to whatever the possibilities may be. And so that's actually what
Yeah.
happened in this case. And it happened with me being in Seaford, Delaware as well. You know, it was unexpected, but I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of go where you feel like you're being sent to serve, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what happened in this case.
That's what happened, and then especially because I know a lot of people were hoping, and I've seen all the Facebook posts and people, you know, saying, you know, make sure you know, vote for James or make sure you support James with the superintendent job. But like you say, even though that may have been a disappointment for some, me knowing you, you know, as a faith-based man, I'm sure, just like you said, you knew if that didn't happen, I mean, God had something even better. And then, bam, look what comes, you know, from that. So, can you speak just a little bit on not getting the superintendent job? Obviously, that was before you knew the role that you're now in, but can you even talk a little bit about that process and how that all played out?
Sure. You know, first of all, it's an honor, I think, to actually become a finalist in a superintendent search. And it was my first time applying for a superintendent position. And so there are several levels in order to be able to even be considered at that point. You have to start with obviously the application process. So I think there were 18 applicants for the position, and they screened the applicants from 18 down to 11. And so they interviewed 11 of us for the
Okay.
superintendent's position. And out of the 11, four of us were named as finalists. And so
Mm.
out of the four, you then go through a process where you have an interview with a lot of community stakeholders. And so you're sitting around the table and they're able to just ask you, you know, sort of random questions based on the areas they represent. And so
Hmm.
you have that interview, and then you also have an interview with the Board of Education, and they do the same thing. So there's actually two interviews with the Board of Education. The first was to narrow it down from 11 to 4, and then the 4 went through two more interviews, one of them being with the Board of Ed and the other with the community group. And so you just sort of make your best effort, and you just kind of talk about how you would actually lead um, as superintendent. And I definitely appreciate the support that everybody had, going through the
Yeah.
process. But again, things work out the way they work out. And
Yep.
Sharon Pepakaya, Dr. Sharon Pepakaya, who is the superintendent now. Um,
Yeah.
we kind of know of each other. I know my wife is a Delta. She's a Delta as well, and her mom is a Delta in the same chapter as Tara. And
Nice.
so again, from what I understand, she's a good person. Her family are good people. They're from St. Michael's, and so
Hmm.
I wish her all the best. And I actually reached out when I actually got the official announcement that she was going to be superintendent, to let her know, hey, look, congratulations. If there's anything that you need, I mean, let me know, because that's what you're supposed to do.
Yep.
Whenever,
That's what you're supposed to do.
yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. Because you think about it, you kind of block your own blessings when you
That's it.
harbor those kind of resentment feelings and things like that, which I think are absolutely unnecessary to do. And I want her to be successful. I have a daughter and two other granddaughters who are in TCPS right now. So her success is
Hmm.
linked to their success. And I have
Yeah.
two more that are coming next year. So yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna do whatever I can to support her.
Great. That's awesome. That's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. And like you said, at the end of the day, everything happens for a reason. It's all going to work out, and as you see, it worked out for both of you.
Right.
And with it working out for both of you, it's going to work out for everybody, in the community. So that's awesome. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Let's go back a little bit, if you don't mind. San Diego, California. Uh, from what I understand, yeah, from where you were raised, born and raised. Talk a little bit just about growing up, because even with the conversations we had, I don't know if I really got to sit down and talk to you just about what it was like in San Diego. Just talk a little bit about growing up in California.
Mhm. Well, I can tell you that I was actually born in upstate New York in Albany. Um,
Okay,
and
okay, okay.
and so when I was about 4 years old, my parents divorced. And so we actually, my mom took my three sisters and myself, and we actually took a Greyhound bus from
Mm,
Albany, New York to San Diego, California. It took us
wow,
3 days to get there. And so
wow,
what I
wow.
remember being that young is that we were staying with some friends of my mother's in San
Uh-huh.
Diego. We were kind of all in this small apartment. But I actually grew up in Southeast San Diego, and so it's not the part of San Diego that you see on the postcards with the sun and
Yeah, a little different, right?
and the palm trees and everything else. There were a number of gangs in our community, and growing up on public assistance on welfare, we did a lot of moving around. I went to about 6 different elementary schools and a
Mm,
couple of
okay.
junior high schools, and so yeah, it was tough having to part of the free lunch program at school, and so that's what life was like. But you never know the difference until somebody points it out. So we were all
Exactly.
kind of in that same situation
Hmm.
when I
Hmm.
was younger. But for me, the Boys and Girls Club, uh, William Jacobs Boys and Girls Club in San Diego was really the place that I think kind of changed my life, and it's where I really plugged into sports. I had a lot of role models that were there, and it kept us off the streets. So I really credit that Boys and Girls Club with essentially saving my life. I mean, I could have easily joined one of the local gangs or something like that because they were
Yeah.
all around. But that was a place where everybody went, and everybody it was just kind of neutral territory. Um, so
Okay.
so yeah, that's you know, after leaving Southeast San Diego, I moved to another part of San Diego called the Encanto area. And so I, you know,
Okay.
kind of lost my ties with the Boys and Girls Club, but I met some really great people who, through a church I attended in the Encanto area, and you know, some of them treated me like a couple of families treated me like their own son. You know, the Sykes family was one, and the Willis family was another. And so, you know, through them, I got an opportunity to see how the Black middle class actually functions. You know,
Okay.
they were homeowners, they were people who had really nice jobs, and so on and so forth. And so my mom understood that too. You know, she got sick, and she wasn't able to work or do much because she was on dialysis, and eventually, because of kidney failure. And so when I was 15, she passed away. And so
Sorry.
I wind up going from uh, San Diego back to Albany, New York, where my father was. And
Today.
so
Okay.
he would come out to visit. But when you talk about New York and California, I mean, you're
Yeah,
not
it's different.
going to be
Different.
there all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah. It's night and day.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right. So yeah, when I was 15, he came and he got me and my younger sister, and the two of us wound up going back to Albany, New York, and that's where I finished high school before going to school at Southern University in Louisiana.
Wow. See, I never knew that. So I knew you went to Southern U for Louisiana because I looked that part up, but I never knew about the Albany. Even though I seen that you graduated from Albany High School, I seen that, but
Mhm.
that's why I was confused at like that San Diego part in Albany. So now
Right.
you cleared that up for us. So now that makes sense. Okay, okay. So let me ask you this, and I
Mhm.
appreciate you talking about the Boys and Girls Club. I was going to ask you like kind of what kept you off the streets, what helped you during that time. What sports did you start playing on that time? Was it just basketball, football? You know, talk a little bit about how sports, help change things for you as well.
Well, I can tell you so you had the William J. Ellis Boys Club, and then right across the field was Memorial Recreation Center. And I remember
Okay.
I used to see the Boys Club. I mean, I could literally see it every time I went into the Memorial Recreation Center, but I'd never gone into it. And there was a guy who was the athletic director uh, at the Memorial Recreation Center, who said, "Well, how come you don't go over to the Boys and Girls Club?" And so I said, you know, I don't know. He said, "Look," he said, "here's $1 because it was only $1 membership at the time." He said, "Here's $1. Go over and go get yourself a membership card." And so that's what I did. I took $1, went over there, went to the front desk, gave it to him, and so I remember them giving me that temporary membership card, and they said,
uh,
you can yeah, you can go into the wood shop, the game room, the pool, the gym. I mean, I was sitting there
wow.
just amazed. I was
Like,
like, man,
wow.
I get to
Yeah.
do all of this stuff. And so, of course, I went right to the gym. And so you saw some of the older guys that I went that you know, kind of went to our school, and then some of them that were in high school, who were there. They were playing pick up basketball and that kind of stuff, and they were the guys that you looked up to when you were that young. And so I really just immersed myself in, you know, sort of everything there. And they played mostly, I think, flag football at the time, and basketball, and different
Okay.
sports. But my main sport was actually baseball, and I played in
Oh, okay.
the league
Okay.
there, and so and I played baseball in high school as well. But yeah, that was my introduction to sports, was really through the Boys and Girls Club.
So the Boys and Girls Club, and then you mentioned it was William J. Oaks Boys and
Right.
Girl William J. Oaks, right? So is that because I remember I want to say last year, if I'm not mistaken, you had reconnected with some friends from
Mhm.
there. I think it was Eric and Mark
Yeah.
Sanchez. Now he's a doctor superintendent. Yeah, talk about that relationship. I know you guys are reconnected. I think maybe y'all known each other, met over 40 years ago, and they kind of reconnected. I don't know the last time you had seen him, but talk a little bit about that. You don't mind
Well, let me
that
just say this to
relationship.
let me just say this to your audience. This man does his homework, and that's why you want to be on the podcast because he does his homework.
My
Uh,
bad.
so yeah,
Appreciate it.
actually, the two of the guys that we were really good friends. That and attended the Boys and Girls Club together. In fact, uh, at times the boys, and it was just the boys club really at that time. The girls club was actually down the street
Okay.
around the corner. And so when the boys
Okay.
club closed, during the summer, there was sort of like an hour in between before it opened back up. And so I
Okay.
would always go over to Mark Sanchez's house, and
Mm.
sometimes Eric Brown would come with me, and we would just go over and we would eat dinner at his house. And
Mm.
so,
Mm. Mm.
it's funny, we reconnected years later. He's now Dr. Mark Sanchez, who is
Yeah.
he's now the superintendent of a junior
Uh,
college
uh,
in San Diego, and that's the event I went
Southwestern
to.
College.
Southwestern College, that's right. And Dr. Eric Brown, who is now principal of Mission Valley High School. I don't know if it's Mission Bay or Mission
Wow.
Valley, but he's
Wow.
a principal himself. And so all three of us became educators. And
Yeah,
so that
educators,
was
and that's crazy.
it is and we never spoke about being educators at all. And it just so happened that that was the path that we wind up choosing, the three of us.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow,
So,
that's awesome. That's
mhm,
awesome. All doctors, that's
right.
awesome. Educators, but that's awesome. Iron sharpen iron, right? Sometimes,
That's right.
you even when you don't know, you impacting people, and the way y'all go, it's all God's aligned it all up. So
Right.
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I know you said you went with your dad at 15.
Mhm.
Obviously, had to be huge going down from California to New York. Can you talk about the impact? Because I know in your dissertation that we're going to get into as well that you wrote, I know you accredited your dad for just the impact he had on you about education. Is that
Mhm.
when he started stressing the importance of education when you moved back to Albany?
Well, let me tell you something. My dad stressed a lot of stuff. Education was definitely one of them. Hard work was another. Hard work was
Okay,
another.
okay.
In fact, when I first moved back to New York after my mom passed, and it was that summer before I was starting my junior year in high school, and so I really wouldn't even leave the house. And so here it is. I was on the phone. I remember one time I was on the phone late, and I was talking to someone back in California, and it's a 3 hour time difference. And so
Yeah.
here it is that it's probably like I'm on the phone and it's 1 o'clock. Um, it's 1 o'clock our time. It's only 10 o'clock their time. And
Hmm.
so I hear the door open upstairs, and it was my father. He says, "Hey, I've got to go to work in a few hours." I said, "Okay." He said, "Can you keep it down some?" I said, "Okay." And so the person on the phone said, "Well, who was that?" I said, "Oh, it's Dad. He's just a little cranky." And I just kept talking and didn't really think about it. And so what I did was so I finally got off the phone, probably got close to 2 o'clock in the morning. And so I'm
Uh-huh.
in bed, and probably about maybe 4, the light comes on, and he's pacing back and forth. And he said, "Oh, I'm a little cranky, huh?" He said, "I'm gonna show you how cranky I am." So he said, "Get out of the bed right now." And so I'm dead tired because I just got into bed. And
Right,
so
just
I
went to
get up.
bed.
So I get up and I'm sitting on the side of the bed. He said, "You've been sitting in this house ever since you got here." He said, "But you know what you're getting ready to do? You're getting ready to get out of this house right now, and you're going to get a job."
Mm,
And
okay.
it's like, wait, it's only 4:30 in the morning. Ain't nobody's hiring at
Come
4:30.
on, this early.
So,
Oh
so
man.
I said, I didn't say anything. I said, okay, I got dressed and I just left. And so I went over to my grandmother's house. It was my maternal grandmother. And my uncle was living there, and he and I were really close, Michael Schultz. And so by this time, it's probably like 5:15 because I had to walk over there because the buses weren't running yet. And so he says, "What are you doing here so early?" I said, Dad, get me out of the house to go get a job. He said, at 5 o'clock in the morning? I said, yeah. So I'm thinking he's sympathizing with me. He's on my side. He said,
Right,
well,
right.
you can come in, lay down and then, and get some rest at least. So I did.
Yeah.
9 o'clock, he comes in there. I tell him the story about what happened. So he kind of looks, he said, well, I guess you better go get that job.
Mm.
So
You better do what you gotta do.
that's right. But you know what? But it was that moment that I can say that truly helped me to understand what I could do. Because then it
Yeah.
became personal. And I said, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to show him that I can go and get this job. And sure enough,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I did. I went and put in applications all day long. And I was determined that I was going to get that job and be home before he got back from work. And that's
Oh
what happened.
wow.
I got it home. I was home and sitting down in the chair with my work uniform, waiting for him to come home. He comes
Wow. Oh
in.
man.
Yeah, he comes in and he says, didn't say anything. Just walked in,
Mm-hmm.
got himself something to drink, sit down. We both watching TV, waiting for the other one to say something. He says, well, how'd you do about that job? How'd you do with that job today? And I pulled out that uniform, gave it to him, and almost like I knew I was going to do it. I
Yeah, I
showed
told.
him.
Yeah, I know what I'm gonna do. Yeah.
He said to me, he laughed, and then he said to me, "It's funny. I had to kick you out of the house at 4 o'clock in the morning to go and do something you could have done yourself the whole time."
On your own. Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's really all I
Okay.
needed. That's really all I
Yeah.
needed.
Yeah. That story makes sense for me for so many different reasons. Just going back to AAU, like we're gonna get into, going into UNLT, great relationship, all those things. That lesson that your dad gave you, it makes sense. Now it makes sense. Now it makes sense. Yo, wow, wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Now, thanks for sharing that, because that does paint the picture. For the road, the road ahead. So, and talking about the road ahead, you had mentioned it that you went to a Southern University in Louisiana, if I'm not mistaken, and
Mhm.
studied mathematics.
Mhm.
Um, why Louisiana? Talk to me a little bit, because again, you was in, went from San Diego, went back to Albany, New York, and now you decided to go to Louisiana. Why Louisiana, and how was that experience?
Well, I talked about the Willis family, and specifically, I was really, really
Yeah.
good friends. And my God, and really god brother was Lou Willis Jr. He he had applied to go to Southern. I didn't know much about it, and so I only applied to two colleges coming out of high school, and it was Southern and Morehouse were the two.
Oh,
and
okay.
and so I was gonna go to Morehouse, and I said, yeah, it had the prestige, it had the name, reputation, that kind of stuff. And so, and then of course Southern, when they, I just kind of tucked their acceptance letter away in a drawer somewhere. And so it
Mm-hmm.
was probably about a couple weeks. I had actually made the decision I was gonna go to college locally in Albany, and I changed my mind at the
Mm-hmm.
last minute and said, no, I need to go someplace else. So
Mm-hmm.
I called Morehouse and I did send some information out to them, and they said, "Oh, well, we can't find you in the system." And I said, "You can." I said, "But I sent the information down to you." They said, "Well, you can come down here and we will see what we can do." I said, "Well, I'm
Mm.
not I'm not going all the way to Atlanta, so you can see what you can
Yeah,
do."
nah,
And
nah.
so so I remembered the letter from Southern, went and grabbed that one out of the drawer and called Southern. And they said, well, as long as you know somebody who's coming, you can bunk with them, but you'll have to be here by Saturday for orientation. And it was Thursday. And
Wow.
so I told my dad what the situation was. And he said, well, you know, I can't get you a plane ticket on the short notice. He said, but I can get you a bus ticket.
Yeah,
So
back
I
on the bus.
wind up that night, I wind up having my bags packed,
Mm-hmm.
took a Greyhound bus
Mm-hmm.
from Albany, New York to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Got there Saturday morning
Wow.
for orientation.
Wow.
And that's how I started at
Man,
Southern.
man, man, that's awesome. That's awesome. It's funny how things go, go full circle. You talk about that Greyhound,
Right.
back on the Greyhound this time to Louisiana. So
That's right.
to get your education. Yeah, so that's awesome. That's awesome. So from there, how did you? Because it's funny, especially on the Eastern Shore, people always ask like, what made you come to the Eastern Shore, or why are you in this part of Maryland? So what's your story? What made you? Because a lot of people obviously know you from being an assistant principal at Eastern High and middle school. I mean, people know you from education here. So what made you come to Maryland? Like, how did that happen?
So I was so when I was a junior, I actually went to a recruitment fair at Southern, and there was actually a Maryland school that was there. I think it was Prince George's County that was there when I was a
Okay.
junior. And so I said, wow, these guys came down. They were,
Yeah.
they just seemed like they had it together.
Mhm.
And so I was looking for them when I was a senior, and that they didn't come down, but Talbot County was there recruiting. And so
Is that right?
Wendell Martin was one of the recruiters. And,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
yeah,
the mark.
and Gladys Gittens, and they were the two that
Mhm.
were recruiting. And so, as an African American male that was going to teach math, um, I mean, basically, nobody really entered, and it was a room full of districts. Everybody wanted to tell me
Mhm.
what they wanted to offer, and so here I am with two bags full of basically offers to come to different districts and teach. I go to and they were like the last one. And so Wendell Martin comes over. He says, "Hey, I know you've been talking to people all day, but can you come and give us a few minutes?" I said, "Fine." So I go up and we're talking, and they asked me questions. They actually interviewed me, and they were the
Mm.
first district that interviewed me out of everybody who was there. And that sent a message to me
Okay.
that said, "You're not taking me just because I'm an African American male. You're
Mhm.
taking me
Yep.
because you feel like I'm a match for your
Yep.
district." And so
Mhm.
after he recorded my answers, he said, "Would you want to come up for a visit?" Said a visit. He said, "Yeah, we're going to get some candidates from Southern and from Grambling, and we're inviting them up for 4 days." I said, "Sure." And so they flew us up.
Mhm.
It was probably about maybe 10 of us. Um,
Okay.
and so we came up and we spent about 4 days in the district. We went to the schools, and it ended that Friday with an interview with Dr. Meek, who was superintendent at the time.
Yep. Mhm.
Uh,
Sam meat. Mhm.
yeah, and so he and I had our we just kind of connected, through the conversation. But I wind up signing a contract and said, okay, I'm gonna go back and pack my stuff and come up. Went to church that Sunday, went to Union, and
Okay.
and that's where I saw this lady at Union. I was like, wow, who is that?
That was my
so,
next question. Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead and do
so,
it.
and so Wendell says, he said, "Who are you talking about?" He said, "You talking about her?" I said, "Yeah, who's that?" He said, "Oh, Tar." I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, you want to meet her?" I said, "Yeah, I do." And so after church, he introduced me to her, and no numbers were exchanged or anything like
Mhm.
that. And so we just had some
Mhm.
conversations. And so I wound
Mhm.
up leaving, going back to Louisiana to do what I thought was preparing for to come back, only to find out from my advisor there was one class that I needed to take, and she was just telling me with probably about
Wow.
a month left before graduation. And so
Wow.
there was no way I could finish the class. So
Yeah.
what I wound up doing was declining the offer from Talbot, and I stayed in
Mm.
Louisiana and just taught math in East Baton Rouge Parish schools at Bel Air High School, and they gave me a full contract even though I was finishing this class. So
Okay.
so I finished at the end of the year, and Wendell Martin calls me out the blue as I'm considering other offers, and he says, "Look, I know they gave you an offer, but don't sign anything. Bye." That's all he said. So they called me from the HR office in Talbot to say they had an opening at Easton High School, and they wanted me to interview for it. So I called Wendell back. I said, "Okay, I'll come up, but you gotta give me a date with the woman in the red dress."
Love it.
And so, and so we kind of
I
we
love
kind
it.
of laughed about it. And I did come back and interview, and I wind up becoming a first year. Well, actually, it was my second year teacher at Easton High, and then actually had the
Mhm.
opportunity through a mutual friend, Eric Jackson. Um,
Yeah.
uh, Tari got my number and called me. That's a story for another day because I'm sure
Okay.
the
Yeah, yeah,
version might
yeah,
be
yeah. We'll take
different.
that offline.
So, so and that's how I wind up coming up. I was recruited through that sort of collective effort from HBCUs, which is a model I hope Talbot eventually goes back to as well, because
Yeah.
nowadays you're gonna have to rethink sort of not just Talbot, but education period.
Everywhere.
With such a
Hmm.
limited number, you have to be more personable in your approach to be able to recruit some of these
Hmm.
uh, potential teachers to come to your district.
Man, and that's an awesome story. That's why I love hearing people's stories. I never knew it went down like that for you to come down. And first shout out to Mr. Morton. I recently retired now, doing this thing on the airlines. I'm always
That's right.
following what he's doing. Where he's at. Always is a great guy. But it's something just how it happened for you to, come down here, have to go back, finish a class, teach there, and then a year later come back. Like wow,
Mhm.
that's awesome. That's awesome. So that's how it all started. That's how it all started.
Mhm.
So let's talk about. I guess we'll transition out again. Real Sports Fan Podcast here with Dr. James Bell, episode 22 of the Real Sports Fan Podcast, talking about a plethora of things. This has been a great episode, and still got a lot to talk about. Um, let's talk about AAU,
Mhm.
Eastern Shore Athletic Organization. Was a program that I played in. I remember when it was birthed. Um, I remember when it all started. It was the only AU program on the Eastern Shore. Well, on this side of the shore, obviously, then Tri County, Salisbury they had something there, and then Delaware, on the lower shore. But for us to do something like that here and to be, based out of Easton, and you getting guys from Cambridge and North Dorchester and Colonel Richardson and before you go, I can remember as a kid almost like a standoff with. I can remember like Richard telling us, all right, we're doing this AU thing, y'all all gonna play together. And we like play together. We want to play together. We want to beat them. Like I can remember Cambridge being on one side, we've been on one side. Her like, and finally, like I don't know who it was. Maybe it was me. We just finally like broke the ice. Like, all right, y'all. Like we gotta make this work. Like it's AAU now. It's like
Right.
But she's so used to going against each other.
Uh-huh.
But talk about that process, because I know it's so many different AAU programs around here now.
Mhm.
But back then it wasn't. Just talk about how that all started.
Yeah. Well, I remember being approached by Richard Guy and Joan Harris, um, and they came Brooks now, and they came over to talk with me. And of course, they knew I worked in the school system. They said, "Look," they said, "it's almost summer, and these kids aren't going to have anything to do. So we want to try and do something with them for the summer."
Mhm.
And I said, "Okay." I said, "What do you have in mind?" I said, "Well, maybe some athletic stuff or whatever." I said, "I'll get on board as long as it has an academic component." And so they said,
Mhm.
"Yeah,
Yeah.
we can create it however we want to create it, blah blah blah." I said, "Okay, that's fine." And
Yeah.
so what I did is I got some volunteers. Wendell Martin became one of them. Crystal Benson, she
Oh
volunteered
yeah.
along with a
Yeah.
few others to provide sort of some academic support, and said, okay, we got
Mhm.
ourselves at least a program, but we needed a facility. So I went to Dr. Meek, who was superintendent, and I said, here's what we're looking to do. And he said, okay, well, what you should do is type up a proposal, and you need to present it in front of the Board of Education. And if they adopt it, then as a
Mm.
program, then you'll get use of the facilities. And so
Okay.
I said, okay. And that was the first time I had written a proposal for a board meeting and
Oh
presented
wow.
to a board of ed.
Okay.
And so I did. They actually approved the proposal, and so they gave us gym time at the middle school. And
Mhm.
so we said, okay. we got the information out. They talked to a couple contacts that they had in Cambridge. I think Paul Pender was one of them. And so it was mostly Easton and Cambridge, with some from Colonel as well. And so the first day we were expecting, okay, maybe we'll have enough. We'll have like maybe 50 kids. There were like 150 kids that showed up in the gym that day.
Yeah, it was crazy.
I know. And so we were sitting there like, whoa, we did not expect it was going to be this many people show up. So we kind of just did the best we could that summer to organize them, let you guys play games and do that kind of stuff, but had that academic component as well. And that's how we were able to keep the numbers down. And so at the end of the season, at the end of the summer, we were talking. It was like, we've got to do something. Now that we see that there's a need, we've got to do something to try and keep this going. And so, I think it might have been Joan Brooks who mentioned, what about AAU? We'll do some research about AAU and then see about maybe entering that. So we did. We organized. We had regular meetings, and Richie Guy and Dwayne Brooks Senior, Hawkeye, Michael Stanford, Bobby Guy. And actually eventually Robert Pitts as well. Robert Pitts Senior,
sure did.
who wind up coaching the girls program. And so we all kind of got together and said, okay, let's just make an organization out of it. And so we wanted to get a nonprofit status and doing all the steps that it took. And then that's when it started. And then we entered our first state tournament. Well, our first game was at the Dunbar High School. You remember that game?
Yeah.
So we each team scrimmaged. They were Madison Square Buccaneers is what they were called at the time. And eventually became Baltimore Stars. And so
Baltimore Stars.
They took turns beating us by like 40 points each. And after a while, their coaches were like taking bets as to how much they were going to beat our teams by. And so, those were the days. That's really how I got started. And we just got better as we went along and learned the rules. And when we finally got everyone to play their own age and stop playing quote-unquote up, is when we got more competitive.
Exactly. Yeah. I was gonna say at first, nobody knew anything. So like you said, like as far as like, playing up and then just the coming together, the chemistry, a lot of them teams that play together and AAU was new. So like you said, and then just playing against different competition besides the shore. Obviously you go across the bridge, you're like, what are those guys eating? We're like someone like myself, I'm a power forward center over here. You go over there, point guard. You know what I mean? So to get used to all of that and everything. So like you said, once everybody got going, all the teams got better. But I specifically want to talk about one of your teams. But I just want to, before I do that, I just want for everyone listening, I just want to name off some of the guys that Dr. Bell coached, because again, majority of you probably just know him as an educator, but he was a hell of a coach as well. And the names that he helped sow that seed into and helped develop are some of the bigger names on the shore that when I say the name, you're probably like, oh, well, I didn't know he coached them, because it was even something I came across like, man, I didn't know he coached them. So I'm just going to name a few of them. It's a lot, but I'm just going to name a few of them. Lil Ron Stanford, Rocky Harris, Laquan Goldsboro, these are Kent guys, Jonathan Robinson from Kent. Remember all those guys. Then even some of the Eastern guys, Cullen Murray Kemp, remember him. Herlock for Monte West, obviously that name rings. I mentioned little Herb Dennis Jr. And then getting into some of the older guys at that time too, Rodney Gladden, Big Rodney Garamorn, which is Albert's little brother, Trey Acree, Chill Davis, Big Jawar. Big Jawar. He mentioned you on here too. When I had him on here, Big Jawar.
Well, it is funny. I talked to Jawar a couple days ago, actually.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, and because I hadn't talked to him in a while, and so I reached out to
Uh-huh.
him, and he said, Coach, make sure you remind them of the game when we played against Mount Royal. And I had forgotten about that. And that was a game where Mount Royal they were beating us by 40 points at halftime, and we were in Baltimore.
Ooh.
And it was a
Uh-huh.
team that he was on with Rodney Gladden and Guerin and all those guys.
Uh-huh.
And so, but we fought back and we wound up losing by 12. Well, the star player on that
Wow.
team was Carmelo Anthony. And so,
Wow. He did say that.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Wow.
And at the end of
That's
the year,
crazy.
yeah, at the end of the year, they actually recruited Gerard to go and play nationals with him. So he had
Oh,
played
okay.
on that team, on that national team with Carmelo Anthony as a result of
Wow.
that,
That's
that, that
crazy.
game.
That's
Mhm.
crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
he did mention something like that on there about Mount Royal. He even said, I got to talk to Coach Bell about that. Okay, so that's what he was talking about. Okay, wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. And this team here that I'm gonna mention, this is the, we say mob in a good way, in the Real Sports Fan podcast, but this is the mob that Skinner said I want you to talk about, because you guys had a deep team, and I'm pretty sure all these guys on here together. But Skinner, if you watch, and this for you, I know you're gonna check this out. But obviously, had D Skinner, your stepson, your son, LT Tonyman Jr., Marcus Felton, Brandon Blake, Dre Ferdinand, Allison Chris White, Quentin. I remember Quentin Ford, Ian. Can't forget Ian. Point forward. Desmond. Obviously, Boo, Dave Milligan. I was always a fan of his game. Adrian Waters, Gary DeShield, just to name a few. But can you talk about how good that team? Because that's the team I remember. And I can remember. Yeah, we started winning more my age, but not like y'all. I mean, y'all went to a whole nother level. Just the way that those guys developed year after year after year, and you could tell how close they became, staying over your house and just doing different things together and stuff like that. Just talk a little bit about that team, if you don't mind.
And I tell you that team was, obviously I appreciate all the players I've been able to coach. That team was probably I was probably the closest with, because I had them the longest. In fact,
Had Lawrence, yeah.
right, and the team that had Dwar and those guys on it. I actually had that team and this team at a tournament together one time in Ocean City, and I was coaching both teams.
That's great.
And so they were older and they were transitioning out, where that team was just now coming in.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
created a situation where they mentored them the whole weekend, and I
Oh
assigned
wow.
them to some of the younger
Oh, to
kids
a
that were on
person.
the
Oh,
other
that's
team.
cool. Yeah, 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 yeah.
And
Okay.
their job was to look out for them. And for the younger kids, their job was to go and seek those older guys if they needed something while they were down there. And so but when I finally just had them, we started from square one. I've got VHS tapes where they were running layups for the first time as a team,
I
and they
bet.
were really really small. It was funny watching it. But yeah, so I had them when they were about 9 years old, and all the way up until they were 17, and graduated from high school. And it was, you know, they had a friendship, they had a brotherhood that lasts in this
Yeah.
day. If they see each
Yep.
other, they still remember the connection that they had with
Mm-hmm.
one another through that program. And it
Yep.
didn't matter if you lived in Eastern or Cambridge or Kent or
Nah.
Carmel or
We I was
Federal
out the
Connect.
window.
It didn't
Yep.
matter. And
Nope.
I think it's unfortunate, and I'll just mention this about what's going on right now, and with these
Yeah.
neighborhood beefs that are going on. It wasn't like that then.
Yep.
Um,
Mm.
and I think with these young people have to understand, young men especially, because that seems to
Mm-hmm.
be more involved, is that they found a common purpose. So even though they were from different places, when they
Yep.
finally played together and they learned each other and they knew each other, they saw they had more in common than they had differences.
Yep.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's what was important. And so I'll say to them right now, it's the same thing. I worked in Dorchester and I worked in Talbot. And I'm telling you, you have more in common than you do differences.
Anything.
And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
but you just won't allow yourself to get to know one another. And you don't have
Mm-hmm.
that reason to get to know each
Yep.
other. And that's what that basketball did for them. It helped
Yep.
them to really. I'm not. They were competitive, especially in high school.
Mm-hmm.
They were
Yeah.
competitive when they played each other. But when they were done, it's like, okay, so whose house are we staying at?
Yep.
And that's what it became,
Yep.
and that's how they became a
Yep.
family. And you really didn't see a lot of what's going on now back then, really because of AAU and the bonds that everybody was sort of making with one another.
Yeah. Yeah. And well said. Well said, because even then, even speaking for myself, I felt safe going to Cambridge because I knew guys there that, even if somebody had a problem, like, oh no, no, they good, he good, you know what I mean? And like you said, now, depending on where you go, the younger generation don't have that, and that, like you said, that needs to be there.
Mhm.
That needs to be there. I remember actually seeing Alex
Mhm.
at a men's prayer breakfast in Cambridge
Mhm.
like a couple months ago, and just me and him seen us for a while. Hey man, what's going? We didn't play together, but we were around each other. You know
Right,
what I mean? So like
right.
you said about the mentorship and everybody knowing each other, that's exactly how it was, and that's how it should be. And like you said, that team in particular always talks about the stories. They always talk about you, and then look from that team, and then we'll segue. But look at that team, even the fruit that that's there between AAU now. You got fourth quarter grind. D's coaching, D Skinner's coaching,
Mhm.
Marcus is coaching,
Mhm.
Ian's coaching. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
guys you coach,
Yeah.
and now they going and doing the same thing,
Mhm.
by what we see. So again,
And and
I
that's
tip my
and that's
hat
the
to you,
that is
Home.
the greatest compliment right there. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
I coached D Skinner and I coached against each other in the BAM league
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. The family,
Saturday,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
after his team won, I actually gave him I gave him a gift
Oh,
for
okay.
beating me, and it was it's the briefcase that I got when I was coaching, and it has Maryland AAU on it, and they're actually headed to national.
Wow,
So it was like
wow.
that's how you pass it on to
Yep,
somebody else who's taking up the
yep,
mantle, and they're doing the same thing.
yeah,
And that's all we
yeah.
ever that's all we ever wanted as coaches.
Mhm.
Going back to
Yep.
when Eastern Shore Athletic Organization started, we just wanted to give
Mhm.
you all something to do that was positive, so that way you can become, great fathers, great
Mhm.
people, and that's really what it was all about. It never was about teaching anybody to go to the NBA or anything like that. It's
Mhm.
that wasn't what it was about.
Yeah.
We wanted to make sure that you all could benefit from a great experience.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys did that and more. So trust me, we still thank you. We look back sometimes, even when we're out talking to ourselves, and again, when as we get older, we think about, we reflect more. And I used to think sometimes, I tell D sometimes, or Michael, like, I didn't realize how young they was when they started, because a lot of guys, in their 20s, early 30s, they ain't thinking about the kids and stuff like that. And I think now, I mean, I'm 37, and I was just thinking back, like, man, it took a lot of sacrifice, not just from y'all, but from your wives, from your family,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it wasn't just y'all. Everybody can, you know what I'm saying? We go to AU tournaments, all the families are there. Go out to eat. Hey, you need something? Here's a couple. I mean, it was everybody. Like, it's just a beautiful thing when you think back, just about being a part of something so special. So
You know,
again, we thank you.
and I
We
think
thank
it's
you for
funny that
sure.
you talk about that commitment, because you're right.
Mm,
It's not just me. My
mm-hmm,
wife, my children, TR would tag along, and
mm-hmm.
she at the games
Yep.
too, because obviously
Yeah.
she
Shit,
had to go
yeah.
too, and so she was
Yeah.
always around us.
Yep.
Avance Rounds, Marcus's
Yep.
younger
Mm-hmm.
sister,
Yep.
always
Yep.
around
Team
the guys
moms.
too. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because Anthony Rounds served as an assistant coach.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Romy
Yep.
Wilson, who was assistant coach on
Yep.
my team, and Kevin Smith, who's
Yep.
Dave Milligan's father,
Mm-hmm.
and Tyrone Smith's father, who who played on the very first team I had when we
Yeah.
started. But it is a sacrifice. Resources, time. But it's all worth it
Hmm.
when they grow up and they have their own families and they're teaching them some of those same things that we taught.
Yeah.
My wife always talks about being the winningest coach in ESL history.
Yeah.
Uh,
She does. She
so
does.
she she actually I was unavailable to coach. I had the guys in league in Baltimore, and
Yeah.
so I knew I had a conflict that Saturday, and I asked another coach to do it, and at the last minute he became unavailable, and so she said, "Okay, well, what do you want me to do?" I said, "You know," she said, "You know what? I'll figure something out." And so I said, "What do you
Hmm.
mean?" And so she said, "I'll figure it out. Bye." So she hung up. So what is she gonna do? Well, so she goes to the guys who were at the house assembled to leave
Hmm.
and said, "All right, come on, let's get in the car." And I guess it was Dave Milligan said, "Who's gonna coach us?" She said, "I'm gonna coach you."
They probably look like, what?
Exactly. So they all piled in the car and they went to Baltimore, and I think it was her, and I think Andra Blake was there on the bench with her, and I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if Avonda Rounds wasn't or not, but they all went to that game. She coached, and they won by 40, and so
Wow.
and
Wow.
so
Oh, yeah, she holding that up. She holding that still.
that was it. So from that point on, that's all I
Oh
heard was that
man,
she was a better coach.
gotta love it. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. I said between that and then, like you said, all us boys staying over either your house or Richard house and stuff like that. Yeah, everybody doing that. You got 10 to 15 boys, staying over. Every woman ain't going for that. So we
So
thank y'all.
that's no
Thank
problem.
you. So fast forward a little bit. So you talked about AAU and Eastern Shore Athletic Organization. Years later, 2015, you write a dissertation for Wilmington University for Doctor Education and Innovation and Leadership. And you wrote about African American males' perceptions of mentoring in that program. Can you talk about just a little bit briefly about the dissertation and how you helped use basically that program into that dissertation?
Sure. I actually was. I remember finishing my coursework for my doctorate program, and sometimes it's a struggle to figure out what you want to write about. Because you
Mm-hmm.
you don't even know how to get started. And
Yeah.
so what I was told was, look, you got to find something that motivates you to want to write about it. And so I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't think of anything at the time. And so I think I was at home and I was putting some stuff away and I saw my old bag that I coached with. And in it, I had this binder that I kept all the information in, and I had a picture on the front of it, a team picture from when we played nationals in Florida. And
Mm.
so, I just kind of looked at it. And then when I went back and talked to my advisor at the time, I said, okay, I think I want to know more about whether or not that program meant anything to these guys. So she said, you know what? She said, yeah, you can do a study around that. And so that's how it morphed into that topic of wanting to know, because I had to be careful as the researcher that I didn't involve myself in the study itself. And so as I was conducting the interviews, and by now they're in their they were in their mid 20s,
Yeah.
maybe 27,
Mm-hmm.
something like that.
Maybe those.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when I was interviewing them, I had to be careful that I didn't influence the interviews. And I just kind of
Okay.
listened more and just guided the conversation in order to come up with the themes. But yeah, that's how it came about. Is that picture that I looked at, and I said, I wonder if this meant anything to any of those guys, and they were actually present at my defense as well. Um, so when I
Oh, okay.
yeah, so when I had my dissertation defense, I actually had it at Easton High School, and invited all of them to come in, and the parents, as many of them that could make it. And so they had an opportunity to listen to the results of the interviews and all the information that was gathered and put together and so on.
Wow. Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I remember I at first knew about her, seen it, a couple years ago. We were trying to revamp things and possibly come back out with
Right.
ESAO, and I remember looking at it then. And I was like, wow, this is like impressive. Like I didn't read it all word for word. It's long, but from what I
Right.
see, I was like, wow, yeah. I was like, this is impressive. So nah, thanks for sharing that, because the impact that, again, that organization had on young African American males like myself at that time is the reason why we're in the position that we're in now, with just being the men we are, and you kind of mentioned it. So, we could have strayed away and did different things, and not saying we were perfect, but that structure,
Mhm.
it helped keep us off the streets, and help continue to uplift and build us. So,
Mhm.
I appreciate you doing that, and sharing that as well. Couple more questions for Dr. Bell on the Real Show Sam podcast. Let's get a few more minutes of his time. We had mentioned, obviously, everything's kind of coming full circle, but we had mentioned, obviously, you teaching, and then, principal. Can you talk about a couple of the other stops that you had, during that time? Obviously, I think Macy's Lane,
Right.
I think you were at in Cambridge. Obviously, you taught more recently. You were at Seaford and made an impact there. I know LT went and spoke to some of the basketball teams last year. I think it was some of
Mhm.
those young guys. I can't remember if you were at Wahar or Salisbury District, but I know Mr. Hughes, who had an impact on you. I know he was there. I'm probably thinking about him, and I know he had a great impact on you as well. And if you want to mention him, but let's talk a little bit about some of those other stops, and kind of how they came about.
Yeah. So while I was after my first year as a teacher, and and at Easton High. This is coming from, of course, Bel High School in Baton Rouge, where I started
Mm-hmm.
teaching. I actually became an administrator after that year of teaching math,
Yeah.
and so that you know that that year, Dr. Thurber was a principal at the time,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
he uh, and so I actually had to do double duty that first year, and because we had a teacher that resigned probably about a week or two before school was about to start, and you really can't find math. You couldn't find math teachers back then.
Oh,
Now
wow.
they're almost non-existent.
Yeah.
And
You was
so,
teaching and doing administration.
right, because I was the only certified math teacher in the building. And so what I did is I spent half the day teaching and half the day catching up on my administrative stuff during that year as well. So I did that, and then after a few years, I went to Dr. Meek, superintendent. And I said, "Look, I want to get some experience." By then, uh, Dr. Hughes had started as an
Mm-hmm.
administrator, um, and so it was probably, I guess, I had been an administrator maybe 4 years, when he started, and so it was his first year. But so I wanted to be there for his first year,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think I was there for a second just to make sure he kind of got accustomed to the role and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, he's a quick study. He transitioned as well
Yeah.
to that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to Dr. Meek. I said, okay, you have two African American males who are in administration at Easton High. I said, um, would you consider transferring me to Easton Middle? And so he just kind of looked
Mm-hmm.
at me and said, it's funny you should say that, because I was really looking at um, providing more of a racially balanced administration. And so he said, but you would want to go to the middle school? I said, yeah, I think I need to get some experience at the middle school. So the next
Oh,
year I
okay.
was transferred over to Easton Middle, stayed there for a couple of years. And then they started a ninth grade academy at the high school, back at the high school.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I
Okay.
became very interested in that because it was a brand new concept. And I love to develop brand new concepts. hence me working with
Yeah.
the band right
There we
now.
go.
And
There we
so,
go. There we go.
and so what what I wound up doing is going back to the high school for 2 years, and I was the administrator in charge of ninth grade academy. After that, I
Okay.
wound up going to Macy's Lane as a principal. Stayed there for 4 years, and then went into district office and became supervisor of student services in Dorchester County Public
Okay.
Schools for about, I guess it was maybe 9 years. Um,
Wow, was it that long? Wow, okay.
yeah, and then again, it uh, God had a plan for me elsewhere, and so I
Yep.
uh,
Hmm.
wind up not even really applying for the job in Seaford initially. I started transferring the
Hmm.
information, didn't finish it, but then it took me on a path where I wind up in the interview process and ultimately interviewed with the Board of Ed, and received a position as director of student services and secondary leadership in Seaford, and really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the people in Seaford, really nice people. And again, it's funny. I said same thing about Easton and Cambridge. You got more in common than you have differences. I can throw Seaford in there as
Yeah.
well and say if
Hmm.
we can just focus on what we have in common and stop looking at what's
That's it.
different, we can
Yep.
really get some things done. And I
Yep.
think they really need to understand
Yep. Man, well said. Well said. Again, we're here with Dr. James Bell, the new Director of Instruction, Academic Support, and Community Well-being. I'm gonna get all that soon without looking. It's a nice title. Nice title there of Build African American Minds. Just started a position on July 24th, 2022. So gonna do some awesome things. I'm excited. Like I said, my daughter goes to PVA, and she's part of the band girls. So I've seen the impact, already. Her growth. Just by going to school 1 year and going to the camp, where what she's learning, not just from a instruction standpoint, but also from a social emotional, standpoint. Maybe some things that might have got missed or maybe not got addressed, in a bigger school, that's being addressed. You're starting off small, and it's just going to continue to grow. And just like you were saying, with the academic center breaking ground soon, and the athletic center has been thriving and everything. So it's been great. It's been great. So definitely looking forward to that. Got two more questions for you. I promise I'm gonna let you go.
that.
My second to last question, mentioning Bam again. You kind of mentioned about coaching against D, but how special is it? Because I think you're probably have more fun than you might even thought you had with being able to now coach again, the Band Boys League. If anybody doesn't know, we just the Band Boys League, Band Boys and Girls, excuse me, league started about 3 weeks ago. We're going into week 4. It's been great. About 9 to 12-year-olds. Every Saturday, we got games. When y'all see this, you'll see this before this coming Saturday. Come on out. Got a 9 o'clock game, and actually, me and Dr. Bell's team play
Yeah,
at 10.
that's right.
So we've been getting a great crowds that have been out there. I mean, it's been a lot of support. So just talk a little bit about just the fun you've had getting back under the coaching umbrella.
Well, I tell you, at first I didn't want to do it. Because
I know you did. I
when,
know.
when I was done with coaching, I said I am done with coaching.
Yeah.
And of course, through the meetings, they said, "Well, yeah, we can
Hmm.
get and see that's what happens when you miss a couple meetings. Next thing you know, you assign.
You gonna pick you?
No.
I might have been the one that pestered you in too. So
Okay, so I have to thank you for this.
yeah.
Okay. So yeah. So again, I remember going, and this is how disconnected I was. So I go to my first practice with these guys, and not I'm still in AAU mode even after all these years, and so I go in and I got this
Yeah.
list of things that I'm gonna do, this, and we're gonna do all this in this hour. And
Mhm.
so I got there and then realized that they're starting from like ground zero.
Brown. Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and
Player
so
development.
instead of having like 5 different things that I was gonna that I accomplished during that time, we spent 40 minutes on layups.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Mm-hmm.
but what it taught me was, okay, slow down. You gotta back up. And you meet people where they are. And it's important to do that even with kids. You meet them where they are, and then you can bring them
Yep.
forward. And so I can see how they're getting better each week. And so I told them, you know what? If we lose a game, don't focus on the score. Let's talk
That's right.
about where you improved today.
Mm-hmm.
Because I want them to connect this experience with life. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really what it's all about. And they're just a great group of kids. They listen,
Yeah.
they try, and that's all
Yep.
I needed. You know, we
Yep.
had a blowout loss, and I said, you know what? I'm not worried about what the score was. I want to see how many of them come back to practice the next time we
Mm-hmm.
practice.
That's
And
right.
all of them were there, with the exception of two that I where I knew they were going. One had
Yeah.
announced it before he was on vacation. So
Yeah.
that's all I wanted. That's all I want, is for them to
Mm-hmm.
try. If you can try, I can teach you. If you don't try and you've given up, then you can't expect that somebody is going to teach you anything, because you
Mm-hmm.
close your mind off to the possibilities. And so I think that's why it's so much fun for me to coach this group of kids that I'm coaching, because they're they want to learn. They want to learn.
They do.
They're not concerned with what their skill level is right now. They're concerned with
Right.
coming back to see what you're going to teach them
Yep.
next.
Yep.
And that's what I appreciate.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Even being side by side with you doing the skills assessment, was a lot of fun. Even I was just like you, because I was originally wanted to coach the girls,
Mhm.
and but being there for the boys, just seeing like how they listened and how they just wanted to learn. It definitely was a lot of fun, and still is, and it kind of makes you excited already for, obviously, week by week for this season, but even like next year, just think about how much better they're going to continue to get, and how we're going to continue to develop the league and whatnot. So, like
Yeah.
you said earlier about developing new things, and
Mhm.
seeing something from the ground up is it's fun. It's fun. So,
Yeah,
so
that's
yeah,
a
I
that's a great
appreciate that.
point too. And I think that's a great point that you just made. My engagement really heightened at the skills assessment that you and I
Hmm.
conducted
Yeah,
with that group, and it was enjoyable.
it
You
was.
know,
It was.
and it makes me remember the fun that we used to have.
Yeah.
And I want to say to
Hmm.
you parents out there who might be watching this and come to the games, it's just a game. This is not
Just
the
a
NBA.
game. Yeah.
Relax. Let the kids
Yeah.
learn however they're going to learn, and just let
Yeah.
them do that without all the other
Yeah.
stuff that we can
Yeah.
sometimes bring to these games. But
That's right.
just help them to enjoy it, help them to become better. And that means listening to the coaches. That means, because the coaches are the ones putting the time in.
Mm-hmm.
People can be critical, of how people are doing on the sidelines or whatever it may be. But if you don't have the whistle, if you're not at the practices, then it's
Yeah.
kind of hard for you to really
That's right.
give that criticism
Hmm.
if you haven't walked a mile in those shoes. So
Exactly.
I would say I'm enjoying it because I enjoy um, sort of the atmosphere providing, and I do like engaging with the parents there.
Hmm.
Gives me the
Yeah.
opportunity to see all of them in one place, and I really
Yeah.
do like that.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. It's been some great turnouts, and like you said, I know you've even seen some people that you haven't seen in a while, or they may didn't see you in a while, and just being able to connect and reconnect, with the community and whatnot. It's a beautiful thing, and definitely looking for more and more of that for sure. So my final question, and you had mentioned, we had talked about, like you said, the young African American male. We talked about mentoring. We talked about sports, and I want you to, with this final one, just talk about how the development and the love and the maturation of you and LT's relationship. Because obviously you came in at a difficult time, I'm sure, and us boys, especially, well, we hard headed. We don't want don't want to hear nothing, especially from someone that's not our dad. But I've seen how, the love you have for each other, and how relationship has continued to grow and develop over the years. So I was there, from the beginning. LT was, he's what 4 years younger than me, 5 years younger than me. So I remember, all of that. So, he's very fond of you, always speaks highly of you. So I want you to talk about, briefly a little bit just about from a personal standpoint. And then on the flip side of that, can you talk about just how much better you see him getting basketball year after year after year? One thing I always told him was that I love the fact that when he was younger, he always played a year or two up. He always played a year or two up, and to me, that helped him get better and better. And then by the time he got to high school and college, I mean, he was just doing whatever he wanted. So just wanted you to speak a little bit briefly about LT.
Yeah, sure. I'll say first of all, I did enter his life and TR's life and Tara's life, at a time where, again, with the loss of his father, those things you never get over losing a parent. And I mentioned that I lost my mom
Yeah.
at 15. He lost his dad at a much earlier age, and for TR it was much younger. I think she was 2 at the time, and I think he was 5. And so, my job wasn't to come in and replace his father. My job, what I had to do was to coexist with his father's memory. That's the only way the relationship was going to work. So when he needed to express things about his biological father, and there had to be room for him in our life as well, because that's something you had to respect. And it wasn't his father's fault that the tragedy happened. And so, with that, I think that helped develop that understanding that I wasn't there to replace. But I do take my responsibilities very seriously. And as, and being married to his mother, it's my responsibility to raise children with her. And so, I think that's kind of how our relationship developed. And so, I would see, I remember there was one particular, they used to do the Elks hoop shoot competition,
Oh yeah, yeah,
at
yeah,
high
yeah,
school. Yeah,
yeah.
the
I was
free
in
throw
it too. Yep.
contest.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember he was sitting there playing a video game. I don't remember which one it was. Might have been Nintendo, Sega, whatever. So he's sitting there playing the game, and I told him, I said, "Well, they're having this free throw contest at the high school." And so he says, "I said, do you want to go?" And he said, "No," and he just kept playing his game. So I walked out of his room, and I thought about it, and I came back in. I said, "Put the game up. Come on, let's go." Um, so he put it up, took him to the high school. TR said, "Well, I want to go too." I said, "All right, yeah, that's cute. Come on, you can go too." And so I took them both up there and signed him up. And she said, "Well, I want to play too." And so I said, "Okay." So I put her on it too. And so he won it.
Yep.
And she finished second. And
Oh
so,
wow, I didn't know
and
that.
so, and
See, go
so,
ahead.
so she qualified to go to Salisbury with him. So they went to
Wow.
Salisbury. He wins, and she was one free throw away, I think, from being able to qualify for the next round. But the point was, he went all the way to he won
Was it
the
Frederick?
region, and he was one free throw away from going to the national tournament,
Okay.
for
Okay.
this Elks hoop shoot. And that just
Yeah.
showed that he, at times, I would push him when he didn't
Mhm.
want to be pushed. And
Yeah.
so eventually, from the with respect to AAU, he was playing
Mhm.
on my team, but I emphasized
Mhm.
defense. And if you
Mhm.
weren't playing defense, you weren't playing on my team. so,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so, so obviously, it was I needed for him to play for somebody else. And so actually, Jr. Barnett
Yeah.
had
Yep.
just finished coaching Darrell Miller, Bunky, and
Yep.
Howard
Yep. Bishop and
Mitchell, and
those guys.
some of those
Mhm.
guys. And so,
Yep.
and Norman Newton. And so he was available to coach. So I went to him, I said, "Well, why don't you start a team around LT?" And so LT, Gary DeShiel, and some of the others wind
Mhm.
up playing. They started a new team. They splintered off and started a new
Yeah.
team. But I was
Yep.
always there taking him to camps, Eastern Invitational, where he wound up becoming most outstanding player at Eastern Invitational the year we went, and just keep pushing him along. And so, then it came time for college. And I said, well, what are you going to do? And so he really had a hard time making up his mind. So I knocked on his door one day and I said, come with me. He said, well, where are we going? I said, up to Chesapeake. And so took him up to Chesapeake, walked him into Frank Zamansky's office, and Mathis was there too. And I said, well, I just registered him for school here. And so he's gonna play for Chesapeake. And so he wound up playing for Chesapeake. They won the Region 20 championship. That's the first time. That's the only time they'd ever done it, as far as I know. And so and he averaged 20-something points a game. So you had to keep pushing him until he was able to then take it. And I remember when he got better, is when I said to him one time, I asked him if he wanted to go down to Orlando and stay with his aunt and work out.
That's what he said too.
And so he said he didn't really want to go, but he didn't want to say no to me.
He didn't want to say no.
Well, so, but when he said yes, that's all I need to hear. So we got in his car. I took him down there. And why is the trainer drawing a blank? You know who it is.
I know, because he had said it on the show, because he had said that same thing about Orlando, how it changed him. And I'm trying to think too. It's on the episode. Go watch the episode with us.
Yeah, and I do apologize. He knows who it is. But anyway, I took him down there to train for the summer. And I left him there. And so I left the car there, left him there with the car, and said, look, you got to figure it out. And then I got on a plane the next day and I flew back. And then I flew back down to get him when it was time for him to come back up for school. But the commitment that he made from that year to the next year, he was clearly a different person, a different player. He was more athletic. He was stronger. He was able to do things he couldn't do before. And that's sort of the sort of where my role was, is to help him realize his potential, and make sure that he was pushed to do a little bit more than he thought he could do.
That's it.
And so I think eventually he took hold of that. I mean, even when he was out of basketball for a couple of years, and sort of finding his way, after Chesapeake. I mean, he kind of went into this space where it's like, I don't know if I'm ever going to play basketball again. So we got an opening or an opportunity, at least, to have him go down to Livingstone. So I talked with the coach. We got in the car, drove him down to Livingstone in North Carolina, and stayed there for a couple of days so he can get registered. Came back home, and he had to make it work. So
he did.
Now, and you think back to when I had to catch these Greyhound buses to go to places and make it work. And so that's all I knew. And so he needed the same thing in order, for his basketball career. And Tiara tell you, I'm the same. I'm the same with her. You've got to create the expectation. You got to have people meet it. I mean, they may hate you for it first, but eventually, you say, "Wow."
Everybody needs a pusher, though. Everybody needs that pusher. Even at the time, it might not feel good. It might be uncomfortable, but trust me, we all have had it. We all need that person that push you along. You thank them later. Yeah.
And I always say that I can push you. I just can't pull you. There is a difference between the two. If you at least are willing to take a step in a direction, I can get behind you, and it's easier for me to do it. If you're just sitting there and you won't even try, I can't grab you and try and drag you where you need to be. And so that's really my philosophy. And so if you're willing to put in the effort, I can help you do what you need to do. And that's why I'm looking forward to this opportunity with BAM and the Academic Center and the programs that are going to operate out of there, workforce development, some other things. When people are ready for that push, then let's go ahead and do it. But as long as you're sitting there doing nothing and you won't even try, there's not much that anybody can do. at that point.
Yeah, man. Man, well said. Well said. You talking, you preaching the gospel right there on those points. Because I like that push pull analogy. You know, it's so good. So I can't even come behind that. I'm just gonna thank you. You know, for coming on and thank you for again. You know, everything that you've done, even the impact you've had on my life, and what you're getting ready to do. I want people to understand the impact, and you talked a little bit about the different things, the impact you're gonna make on BAM. It's gonna be monumental, you know. So, you know, people, you know, listen out. It's gonna be a lot of different opportunities and different things that come up. It's gonna be a beautiful thing, you know, what I know you're gonna do. Um, you know, before we go, Dr. Bell, any last words, any remarks, anything else you want to say before we get off?
Well, just wanted to mention, of course, things are, obviously things evolve and your mindset changes and you become a different person based on experiences. And now
Mm-hmm.
you're looking at a James Bell who has 5 grandchildren, two sets of twins, Taylor,
Mm-hmm.
Lonnie, Torrin, Tyler, and of course Braylon Newman, LT's daughter,
Mm-hmm.
and then my own
Yep.
10-year-old daughter. That's a story for
Yep.
another day in terms of how I went
Yeah.
there.
Who's
But
playing basketball as well in the
that's
band league?
right,
Is also playing basketball in the
Riley
band league.
Bell. Yeah. She decided that she wanted to go ahead and
Yeah.
give it a shot, and we'll see what happens. If she
Mm.
likes it, then we'll continue
Yep.
to work. But
Yep.
but life is just about evolving. The parent I am now is a much different parent, and I think a much better parent than the
Mm.
one even when I started parenting LT and TR, because we were figuring it out together. And so for anybody
Mm-hmm.
who's out there as a parent, there is no book for this, but you just
Mm-hmm.
have to be open to listen and to grow and
Yeah.
evolve. And
That's
if
it.
you're able to do that, then you'll see the impact that it'll have on your child. Let other people sometimes talk to your child and tell a story that you can't, or do
Yep.
or do something that you can't. That doesn't mean that you failed as a parent. What it means is that you're actually very wise and you're growing and you're understanding of what's important. And what's important is
Mm-hmm.
making sure that your child is able to go to school, do well academically, is able to behave. And we're going
Mm-hmm.
to have some social emotional programs eventually that are going to, we want to try and partner with the school system to be able to help them address some of the negative
Nice.
behaviors in school, so that we can actually
Yeah.
help the student to become more successful. So we're just looking forward to whatever the possibilities may bring.
That's awesome, man. And even though I talked about, you know, season 5 coming to an end, I'm sure, you know, we need to get back on here for a part 2 to talk even more about some of those programs that they develop, you know, in the months and, you know, as time goes on, you know, to inform people, you know, we'll definitely do our due diligence if we have to, you know, if we go live, you know, whatever's needed. But without a bell saying, you know, it's
Mm-hmm.
very, very true and very correct. So, you know, it's a lot of excitement out there. And for somebody who might not, uh, know what to do, you know, ask questions, you know, and like Dr. Bell said, it's a lot of opportunities out there. And sometimes you're right. You even said it about with LT, sometimes you need someone else to say something to the
Mm-hmm.
child. You can't always be the parent,
That's
you
right.
know. So, you know,
That's
well
right.
said. Well
Yeah.
said. Yep,
So,
yep. So
and
and
let me
this
say
has
this
been a lot of
before.
fun.
Yeah, let me say
Oh,
this
go
before
ahead.
we
Go
get
ahead.
off.
No, go ahead.
I do
Mm-hmm.
appreciate the platform that you created here.
Thank you.
You created an audience, a following to be able to just talk about sort of the intertwining of the athletics along with life stories and experiences
Mm-hmm.
and things like that, to be able to get messages
Yep.
out. And for your audience, I just want them to understand this about me, that you're not looking at somebody who always had it together and always knew what to do. Some people may think that, but they really don't know your story until you have a platform
That's
and an
right.
opportunity to tell it. And so,
That's right.
I don't shy away from my upbringing, my childhood. It was difficult, it was tough, but you got to persevere. And I think our community is resilient, and you all can persevere,
Yep.
but you've just got to
Yep.
give yourself an opportunity to do it. So,
That's it. That's it. And that be open is it was key to me when you said be open. Be open. I mean, that can mean a lot of things. A lot of people be open, heart, mindset, all that, So yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So a lot of great things coming. Again, Dr. James Bell, Real Sports Fan Podcast. Make sure you check this episode out. Tell a friend, share it, subscribe, all that good stuff, and look out for all the awesome things that Dr. Bell's gonna be doing in the band community and in the community period. So Real Sports Fan Podcast. We out of here. Peace.